When the buried past resurfaces, when power and ambition seem strong enough to crush everything, only one thing remains unshaken: love. From a wound that turned into tragedy, Ethan and Marissa found each other in the fiercest storm of their lives, and there, they not only healed, but also learned how to choose each other all over again. This is not a story of perfection, but of souls who seemed broken, yet still rose for family, faith, and hearts that never stopped beating in the same rhythm. Ethan Caldwell had never imagined that his day could shatter in less than an hour. That morning, the CEO of Caldwell Holdings sat in his glass-walled office high above Zurich, tie neatly knotted, voice steady through his headset, as he steered an international negotiation worth hundreds of millions. Amid the cold numbers and calculating gazes of his business partners, he radiated the calm dominance of a man used to wielding power, to bending destiny with the stroke of a pen. Then his private phone buzzed, a call from Caleb's school in Manhattan, his 6-year-old son's private academy. The nurse's voice broke through, trembling with panic. "Mr. Caldwell." Caleb fell on the playground. "The wound is deep, and there's a lot of bleeding. We've called an ambulance." For a second, Ethan froze. The voices of the conference dulled into a muffled drone. The multi-million-dollar deal lay unfinished, shareholders still waiting for his nod. But it all slipped away, meaningless. "We'll adjourn. Something's come up." His voice cut like steel, but his hand trembled as he rose. 15 minutes later, he was at his private airstrip. The jet readied for New York, while his thoughts spiraled. Caleb, that boy was his only reason for believing in life after so much loss. Now, just the image of his son collapsing, blood soaking that tiny uniform, choked the air from his lungs. The 8-hour flight stretched into an eternity. Ethan sat rigid in the luxury cabin, eyes fixed on his phone's wallpaper, a beaming Caleb holding up his favorite plastic dinosaur. Fear roared inside him like an old storm reborn. He remembered his brother, Daniel. A minor sports injury, so trivial at first, until the surgery went wrong. Ethan was 14 when he sat in a hospital corridor all night, heard the doctor step out and shake his head, listened to his mother's wails, watched his father's collapse. The memory had carved itself into him, sharp as glass. Since then, every whiff of disinfectant, every stretcher wheeling past, dragged him back. He had sworn never again, never another loved one lost behind an operating room door. When the jet touched down at JFK, his driver was already waiting. Ethan didn't even let the car stop entirely before he jumped out, a father stripped of all the polished armor of a powerful man. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie was hanging loose, and he was only a parent racing against time. St. Jude Memorial Hospital loomed ahead, cold and forbidding. Inside, the acrid bite of antiseptic hit his nose, sending his heart into a painful staccato. "Mr. Caldwell, please stay calm. Caleb is being taken into emergency care," a guard reassured him. But Ethan wasn't listening. He clutched Caleb, his little boy, pale, trembling, blood soaking through his pants, and stormed through the corridors. "I need a doctor. Now, this is my son." Heads turned nurses, doctors, patients alike. The man known as a storm in the financial world had become a storm in the hospital, and no one could look away. "Daddy, it hurts," Caleb whimpered. "I'm here." Ethan bent close, holding him tighter. "You'll be okay. Look at me, Caleb. Don't close your eyes. You're safe now." His footsteps thundered down the hallway. He shouted at anyone in white who passed, desperate. But instead of the ER, a nurse blocked his way. "I'm sorry. The emergency wing is under sterilization. All patients are being redirected upstairs to maternity and pediatrics. Take the elevator and turn left." "Maternity?" he muttered in disbelief. But there was no time to argue. He rushed into the elevator, Caleb in his arms, heart hammering like war drums. The third floor was eerily still. No clatter of machines, no frantic footsteps, only the faint cries of newborns echoing in sterile air. He hurried toward pediatrics, but at room 418, a half-open door caught him. From inside came the sound of ragged breathing, a woman's agonized cries. He shouldn't have stopped. Caleb needed him, but instinct rooted him in place. Through a shifting curtain, a face appeared. Marissa Vega. Her. The woman who had once been everything, then vanished without a word. The woman he had thought would walk beside him for life. Now she lay on a hospital bed, hair plastered with sweat, fingers clutching the rails, eyes wide with terror. A scream tore through the air. "Daddy!" "Why is that lady yelling?" Caleb whispered. Ethan stood frozen, every muscle locked, as if fate had ripped open a door he never expected. Her name escaped him. Juarce. Like a prayer. Marissa, her head turned, eyes blurred with tears, and for a heartbeat, the pain vanished. Breath caught in her throat as she recognized the figure in the doorway. No dream, no memory, but Ethan in the flesh. The man she had fled. "Ethan," her voice was barely a whisper, half disbelief, half fear. He stepped forward without thinking, still cradling Caleb. His pulse pounded, past and present colliding in one brutal moment. Marissa, in labor, alone, and carrying what could only be his child. Caleb whimpered, dragging him back to reality. "Dad, my leg." "I know, son." Ethan kissed his hair, holding him close. "Just a little longer, I promise." A nurse bustled in, startled by the sight, the powerful CEO holding a bloodied child at the foot of a labor bed. "Mr. Caldwell, please take the boy to room 420. A pediatrician is waiting." He nodded, but his eyes clung to Marissa. In hers, he read fear, shame, and something more profound. Regret. Another contraction racked her. She cried out, hand trembling for something to hold. Before he could think, Ethan lowered Caleb into a wheelchair nearby and took her hand. "Breathe. Marissa, look at me. Breathe." Tears spilled down her cheeks. What are you doing here? My son's been hurt. And you, God, you're..." His voice broke. "Having a baby," she gasped, anguish twisting her face. "Alone." The word sliced him open. 7 months ago, she disappeared with nothing but a note. "I can't be who you need. I'm sorry. Goodbye." He'd searched everywhere, hired investigators, but she had vanished like smoke. Now, the cruel truth. She had been carrying life, perhaps his life, in silence. "Prepare the instruments. She's crowning," the doctor barked. Ethan tightened his grip, whispered against her ear. "You're not alone. I'm here." She shook her head, sobbing. Don't say what you can't keep." "I never left you," his voice cracked. "You left me." Pain stole her reply. She screamed, body bowing as the room erupted in chaos. And then, a cry, thin but fierce, splitting the suffocating air. A newborn girl, red and tiny, was laid on Marissa's chest. She wept, trembling as she cradled her daughter. Ethan stood transfixed, thunderstruck. One look at the delicate nose, the curve of the lips, something in him knew. But the doctor's shout snapped him back. "Another one coming. Push." Marissa sobbed, shaking her head. I can't." "You can," Ethan urged, leaning close. "Look at me. Take my hand. You're not alone." With one final scream, a second baby entered the world, smaller, weaker, but alive, her cry fragile and real. The room hushed, awed. Twins. Marissa collapsed, drenched in sweat, arms trembling as she gathered both daughters. Exhaustion ravaged her, but her eyes shone fierce with love. Ethan sank onto the bed's edge, one broad hand brushing the downy head of the nearest girl. His heart twisted, all anger, all betrayal dissolving into a truth impossible to deny. These children were his blood. From the wheelchair, Caleb peered with wide eyes. "Dad, are they my sisters?" Ethan faltered, breath heavy. "Maybe. Yes, maybe they are, son." Marissa lifted her gaze, eyes swollen with tears. Between them stretched a chasm of unsaid words, but one thing was undeniable. The past was not over, and the present had just begun, with the cries of 2 tiny daughters. Room 418 at St. Jude Memorial seemed frozen in time, after the first cries of life echoed. 2 newborn girls lay upon Marissa's chest, their fragile breaths rising and falling with the exhausted rhythm of their mother's heart. The air was thick with antiseptic, the clink of metal instruments, yet an almost sacred light filled the space, a light Ethan could not tear his eyes away from. He was a man used to control, A signature could end hundreds of jobs. A decision could shift markets. But here, before these two tiny lives, every ounce of his power, every shard of logic, meant nothing. His heart stumbled, knees nearly giving way beneath the weight of emotions he could not contain. Marissa shifted, voice raspy, broken between breaths. You shouldn't be here." Ethan's gaze stayed locked on her. "Were you planning to do this alone? No one here but doctors and nurses? Marissa, have you lost your mind?" "I had no choice." Tears slid down her cheeks, born of more than just pain. "I disappeared so you could be free. You didn't need the burden of me of these children." A bitter sound tore from Ethan's chest, half laugh, half growl. "Freedom? You call vanishing betraying us freedom for me?" From the wheelchair, Caleb's small voice cut through, soft but piercing. "Dad, don't shout. She's tired." His son's words struck him silent. Ethan swallowed hard, forcing down the storm of anger. He turned back to Marissa, voice low and raw. "Do you have any idea how I searched for you these past 7 months?" Marissa looked away, stroking the forehead of the first girl, the one squirming faintly, lips puckering at the air. "I know, but I couldn't come back. Not after what I discovered." Ethan's eyes darkened. "What did you discover?" Her chest rose and fell, unevenly. 2 weeks after I left, I felt sick, dizzy, nauseous. At first, I thought it was stress. Then, the test showed 2 lines. I was in shock, Ethan. Completely shattered. He froze, muscles rigid. She choked on her words. I panicked. We had just fallen apart. You were buried in your work, in cold press conferences, and I wasn't even sure these babies were yours. The air turned to ice. Ethan sank onto the chair by her bed, fists clenching. "What did you just say?" Her voice cracked, trembling. "At a retreat in Mexico, one night I lost control. A mistake. I thought maybe they weren't yours." Ethan's laugh was harsh, pale with fury. "You would make me believe that even the most sacred thing between us could be tainted by doubt." Tears poured from her eyes. "But I tested. They're yours. Both of them are yours." The truth crashed down like stone. Ethan closed his eyes, the world-spinning betrayal slicing deep, but laced with an aching relief. These girls were his blood, his heart. He whispered hoarsely, "And yet you stayed silent. You let me live like a madman, chasing ghosts for 7 months." Her hands trembled around the babies. "I was afraid. Afraid you'd see me as a burden, as someone who would ruin your life." Ethan stood abruptly, towering over her. "You think I'd choose meetings over my children? Contracts over my flesh and blood?" The room thickened with silence. Caleb watched, confusion clouding his innocent eyes. He bent over the small whiteboard a nurse had given him and scrawled with his crayons a family of 5, a father, a mother, 1 boy, and 2 tiny sisters. He held it up shyly. "Is this us? Me, Dad, Miss Marissa, and the babies?" The silence broke. Marissa sobbed openly. Ethan's heart cracked wide, shards scattering as he bent and kissed his son's hair. His hand rested gently on little Ava's crown, the first twin. For the first time in years, Ethan Caldwell was no mogul, no unshakable titan. He was simply a father, and a man who once lost the love of his life. The twins' cries filled the room again, thin and trembling, but somehow sweeping away the suffocating weight between them. Nurses bustled in, lifting the infants to clean and swaddle them in pale pink blankets before returning them to Marissa's arms. She held them as though they were spun of glass, fingers trembling, afraid they might vanish if she didn't keep touching them. Ethan sat at the edge of the bed, eyes locked on them. His chest heaved, heart pounding a rhythm he hadn't felt in years. "I never imagined having more children," he confessed, voice low, wind-like. "I thought Caleb was enough. But now..." Marissa avoided his eyes. "You don't have to say anything. I know you're angry. I know I broke you. But don't regret them. Don't blame them." His jaw tightened, leaning closer. "Don't you dare. How could I blame them? The only one I don't know what to do with is you." Her lips trembled. "I'm not asking forgiveness. Just Let me raise them. I can manage. Manage? His laugh cracked, half bitter, half broken. You nearly collapsed giving birth. Do you think you can handle nights of screaming, of nursing, of exhaustion, alone? I've prepared. No, Marissa. His fists clenched. You didn't prepare, you ran. And now, standing before truth, you still think you can shoulder it all. But you can't. I won't let you be alone anymore. Their eyes locked. Hers, weary but resisting. His, aflame with rage and buried love. The doctor interrupted gently. Both mother and children are stable, but she needs absolute rest. We'll move you to a private room. Marissa nodded faintly, sinking into her pillows. The twins stirred, tiny eyes fluttering shut, serene in their mother's embrace. Ethan turned to Caleb, kneeling to meet his gaze. I'll take you to get stitches now. You'll be brave, won't you? Caleb whispered. What about Miss Marissa? She'll be fine. Ethan swallowed hard, then added, and so will your sisters. You'll see them soon. The boy nodded, though his eyes lingered on Marissa as the nurse wheeled him away, a fragile thread binding the two adults across a chasm of hurt. Only Ethan, Marissa, and the twins remained when the door closed. The air seemed to press them closer, the white walls closing in, demanding they face what was unresolved. Ethan drew a deep breath, his voice rough. I hated you, Marissa. Hated you enough to want to erase every memory. But now, looking at them, I see only how foolish I was. Foolish to let you go without chasing after you. Her tears fell anew. If you had chased me, would it have changed anything? Or would we still have broken, just later? He didn't answer at once. Instead, his hand reached for hers, the one cradling Ava. Just a touch, light as air, but it sent a shiver through her, reminding her he still knew exactly where she was most fragile. I don't know, he admitted, voice strained. But I know this. I won't miss another day with them. Marissa closed her eyes, tears spilling unchecked. Don't say it unless you're certain. I can't survive another lie. Ethan leaned closer, breath warm against her ear. I am certain. This time, I'm certain. And in that moment, though both hearts were still wounded, they knew. This conversation wasn't an ending, it was only the beginning. Ahead lay a road jagged with thorns, yet it was the only road that could lead them back to each other. Marissa lay on the hospital bed, the harsh white light from above washing her skin even paler. Beside her, Ava and Arya slept in their cradles, lips parted like trembling petals, their breaths soft, fragile, and steady. The peace of their slumber stood in stark contrast to the storm raging inside Ethan. He sat on a metal chair, hands clenched so tightly that veins rose stark against his skin. His eyes never left her, yet he could not quite meet them head-on. 1,000 questions screamed in his mind. Why did you go? Why did you hide them? Why did you make me endure 7 months of emptiness alone? Marissa felt the weight of his stare and knew the fury behind it. She turned weakly, her voice rough. Ethan, I'm sorry. He gave a cold, bitter laugh so sharp it cut his chest. Sorry? That's all you have after disappearing with my children? Her lips trembled, tears glistening. I don't know what else to say. When I found out I was pregnant, I panicked. I thought you never wanted more children. You said it once, Ethan. I remember. His heart lurched. The memory hit hard the night after Daniel's funeral, when whiskey had drowned his grief until words slipped loose. I can't take another loss. Caleb is enough. Just him. I need no one else. Back then, Marissa had sat in silence, and he had let her believe those words were the permanent truth. God, Ethan whispered, dragging his hands through his hair. I said that in pain, not because I didn't want more children. Marissa, I was afraid of losing anyone else I loved, not afraid of being a father again. Her sobs shook the sterile air. But you never said that. All I felt was you drifting away, building walls between us. I thought, you didn't need me anymore. Ethan shot to his feet, leaning over her, voice raw. So you chose to run? To abandon me, abandon a child not even formed yet? You thought that was protection. Marissa broke down, her words broken, gasping. I didn't want to be a burden. You have an empire, Ethan. I'm just an ordinary woman, broken and scarred. I thought you'd never want someone like me. And, after Mexico, I felt filthy. His body went rigid. His voice cut, low and sharp. Mexico? She closed her eyes, tears spilling. One night, I was drunk, lost, weak. I hated myself for it. That's why I couldn't be sure when I discovered the pregnancy. I didn't want to hurt you more, so I stayed silent. The room collapsed into silence, a void pressing down on them. Ethan staggered back, as if the blow had landed square in his chest. His fists shook, knuckles white. You doubted. My children weren't mine. His voice was hoarse, every syllable tearing through his throat. Marissa nodded faintly, shame drowning her. At first, yes. But I was even more terrified when the results proved they were yours. Terrified you'd hate me for ever doubting. Ethan dropped into the chair, burying his face in his hands. Inside, a war raged rage at her silence, agony at her doubt, and yet a fragile relief. Ava and Aria were his daughters. When he finally lifted his gaze, his eyes burned red. Do you know how I died every day these past 7 months? Waking up to an empty bed, hearing Caleb ask, "Where's Mommy?" and having no answer, and signing contracts with a hollow chest, drinking, only to grow more sober. I hated you. But the worst part wasn't hate. It was love that wouldn't die. Marissa's sobs broke into the sterile air. Ethan, his hand reached out, touching hers for the first time in months. I don't know what to do with you, Marissa, but with them, Ava, Aria, I know. I will stay. I will never leave them. Or Caleb. Her grip tightened, trembling with tears. Ath understood in that moment. The lies were shattered, and nothing was left but raw, painful truth. And the question that loomed, what would they do with the love still clinging stubbornly between them? The room was filled only with the steady beep of the heart monitor and the soft sighs of the sleeping twins. Ethan sat motionless, eyes on the gleaming floor, Marissa's words replaying in his mind like a blade cutting open the same wound. Mexico. Doubt. Silence. Running away. Marissa turned, watching him, this man who had always seemed unshakable, untouchable, invincible, now trembling, fragile, fighting not to break. Never before had she seen Ethan like this. Ethan. Her voice quavered. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. But I didn't dare to face you. I thought if I disappeared, you'd forget. Find someone better. Someone who wasn't me. He raised his head, eyes blazing, voice cracked but fierce. Forget. After Daniel, after my mother, after losing faith in family, you were the only thing that gave me hope. And you left. Without a word, her tears flowed unchecked. I was a coward. I couldn't bear the thought of you looking at me with disappointment. Better for you to hate me than pity me. He surged forward, looming over her, voice breaking. I never pitied you. Not once. If you had ever looked closer, you'd know the only thing I felt was love. Love so strong that when you vanished I couldn't breathe. Marissa gasped, gripping the sheets, sobbing. I never dared believe that. I thought you only needed your company, your empire, the perfect woman beside you at galas. Not me, awkward, weak, flawed. Ethan seized her hand, pressing it as if branding her with his truth. I needed you, no one else. And now, when I look at Ava and Aria, his eyes glistened, turning toward the twins, their tiny chests rising and falling in peace. I know I've already lost too much. I won't lose another day. Silence stretched, heavy but strangely tender. Words had cut deep, but now nothing remained hidden. Amid the wreckage, something fragile stirred like life pushing up through broken stone. At that moment, Caleb returned, stitches fresh, limping slightly but bright-eyed. Dad, look, dinosaur bandage. He proudly showed the T-Rex plaster on his leg. Ethan laughed, lifting him. My brave little hero. Caleb leaned over the cradles, peering at his sisters with vast wonder. They're so tiny. Dad, are they really my sisters? The air tightened. Ethan and Marissa exchanged a glance, hesitant, waited. But Caleb's eyes were clear, innocent, and filled with joy. Ethan rested a hand on his son's shoulder. His voice was steady now. Yes, Caleb, this is Ava and Arya, your sisters." The boy beamed, touching Ava's tiny hand gently. "Hi, I'm your big brother." Marissa's heart broke open. All her fears, the rejection, coldness, and distance melted instantly. In Caleb's wonder, Ethan's trembling touch, she saw the truth she had buried for months. They were still a family despite everything. Ethan turned to her, voice low but resolute. "You can doubt me, you can hate me, but never again take my children from me. I lost you once, I won't lose them." Marissa nodded through her tears. "I promise, this time, I won't run." Ethan exhaled, as though unshackled for the first time. His hand brushed Arya's cheek, soft, reverent. In that fragile moment, he understood that truth was better than lies, no matter how cruel. And from the wreckage, a new beginning could rise. Night settled over Street Jude Memorial, soft golden lamps replacing the harsh white of day. Room 418 grew hushed, broken only by Caleb's even breathing as he curled on the couch, and the faint whimpers of two newborns stirring in their cradles. Ethan sat by the window, gazing at the city lights blazing against the dark. But inside, old ghosts stirred restlessly, threading through the present. Daniel, his brother, lay pale on the operating table, the mechanical rhythm of surgical machines filling sterile silence. His mother waited nights by the door for a son who would never return. And himself, just 14, swearing never again to care so deeply that loss could destroy him. Now that oath lay shattered at the sight of Ava and Arya. Their tiny fists had torn down walls he had spent 20 years building. Marissa stirred, breath sharp with pain. Ethan was at her side in an instant. "Are you all right? Do you need a nurse?" She shook her head weakly. "No, just the pain. 2 babies at once, my body's still trying to keep up." He sank into the chair by her bed, voice low. "I still can't wrap my head around this. You, them. It feels like a dream and a nightmare." Her tired eyes gleamed softly as she turned toward him. "Ethan, do you remember when I was here 3 years ago?" He frowned. "When Caleb was born?" She nodded. "Yes, I almost bled out that night. The doctor said if they'd been minutes later, neither Caleb nor I would have made it." His eyes closed, the memory cutting deep. He had stood in the corridor, praying for the first time in years, bartering with any god who would listen. "Let her live, and I'll change." And she had lived. But afterward, he had buried himself in work, letting fear of loss calcify into cold distance. "I remember," he whispered, voice raw, "every detail, and I hate myself for forgetting the promise I made then." Tears slipped down her face. "You're not the only one who forgot. I forgot how to hold on to you. I thought loving you would be enough, but I didn't know how to pull you back from the dark." He gripped her hand, anguish burning in his eyes. "You shouldn't have had to. I should have walked out of it myself, but I didn't. I left you to fight alone. My fear killed us." They sat there, hands clasped tight, 2 broken halves, clinging to the faint pulse still binding them. The past rose not to condemn, but to remind them. They had nearly lost everything once. They could not let it happen again. Caleb shifted in his sleep on the couch, clutching the crayon drawing he'd made that afternoon, a family of 5. The lines were crooked, the colors messy, but in the eyes of a 6-year-old, it was more perfect than any contract Ethan had ever signed. The silence grew gentler until Marissa's whisper broke it. "Do you know about the first baby I lost?" Ethan stilled, staring at her pale face. "Lost? The first?" She nodded, tears soaking her pillow. "Before Caleb, I was only a few weeks along. Then the pain, the blood. I called you, but you were in a meeting. Your secretary said you'd call back, and I lost the baby alone." The words hit like a blow. Ethan remembered that afternoon, the merger talks with a European firm, the call he dismissed as unimportant. He had no idea the press of one button decline would carve a wound that never healed in her heart. "Marissa," his voice trembled, "why didn't you ever tell me?" "I did, but you didn't hear me. You were too busy to listen." She gripped the sheets tight. "From then on, I was afraid. Afraid that I was nothing more than a shadow, a footnote to you. And when I carried Caleb, I thought, Maybe if I died in childbirth, you'd keep working, keep signing contracts. Don't. Ethan's voice cracked, clutching her hand like he could anchor her to life itself. You're wrong. The night Caleb was born, I prayed like a madman. I thought if I lost you, I couldn't go on. She met his eyes, tears burning. Then why did you drift away? Why did I turn each night and find an empty bed, the smell of whiskey and papers instead of you? He had no defense. The memories pierced him endless nights, burying himself in numbers, thinking control in business could shield him from chaos in life. He thought he was protecting them. Instead, he was breaking her. I didn't know how else to cope, he admitted, voice hoarse. I thought if I controlled everything at work, I wouldn't lose anyone else. But I was wrong. I lost you. Her shoulders shook. I don't say this to punish you, but if we're to move forward, you need to understand. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I became a woman begging for scraps of your attention, and I hated who I was becoming. His voice broke into a whisper, and I hated myself for letting you become that. The room fell silent. Only Arya's tiny cry stirred the stillness. Ethan rose and lifted her from the cradle with unsure hands. At first clumsy, he soon found a rhythm, large hands steady against her fragile body. She quieted, nestling into his chest, as if she knew him already. Marissa watched, heart aching. It had been so long since she'd seen Ethan cradle a child, tender as if he held the whole world in his arms. He turned back, Arya pressed against him, voice low, rough with emotion. I don't know if you can forgive me, but I know this, I won't waste this chance. Not again. Tears welled in her eyes, but they carried not just grief, but a flicker of hope this time. Fragile, uncertain, but real. And so the small hospital room, heavy with blood, with tears, with scars of the past, became the first place where two wounded hearts began to find a rhythm again. Both had feared, both had suffered, but neither had stopped loving. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to begin anew. The first night after the delivery, Marissa's private hospital room was filled with the breath of 3 children. Caleb curled up fast asleep on the sofa, Ava and Arya taking turns stirring in their cradles. The fluorescent lights dimmed in the hallway, leaving only the hushed shuffle of nurses moving past. The air carried a fragility, a reverence as if a new page had just been opened, trembling but alive with hope. Ethan sat in the armchair by the bed, his jacket discarded, his tie stuffed carelessly into his pocket, and his hand stuffed with a paper cup of cold coffee. His eyes were bloodshot not from nights in a boardroom, but from hours spent unable to look away from the 3 tiny lives before him. Beside him, Marissa leaned back against her pillows, bathed in the amber glow of the bedside lamp. She looked pale, worn, yet beautiful in a way words could not define. Ava rested in her arms, suckling softly at sleep, while Arya lay still in the cradle. Caleb stirred, rubbing sleepy eyes, and whispered hoarsely, "Dad, are we staying here all night?" Ethan set his coffee aside, smoothing his son's hair. "Yes, son, tonight we're all here. No one gets left behind." The boy smiled faintly, nestled his head into his arm, and drifted back asleep. The room grew quiet again, but in the rhythm of small breaths, silence no longer felt threatening. Ethan and Marissa sat in their stillness, one cradling Ava, the other watching over Arya. There were no titles, no meetings, no unanswered messages, only 2 parents fumbling through the first night of a family reborn. After a while, Marissa's voice slipped out, fragile as a sigh. "You don't have to stay. You could go home or back to the company. I can manage." Ethan's gaze sharpened, steady. "You can barely stand. Do you really think I could leave you like this?" She bit her lip, avoiding his eyes. "I've gotten used to it. These past 7 months, I did everything alone. But this isn't those 7 months anymore," he said. Lowering himself onto the bed's edge, he reached out his arms. "Give Ava to me. You need to rest." She hesitated, then placed the baby gently into his hands. He was awkward, a little stiff, but steady. Pressing Ava against his chest, he whispered words only she could hear. The tiny girl stirred once, then sighed and settled. Watching him, Marissa felt something inside her loosen. For the first time in months, She was not utterly alone. Moonlight slipped through the window, painting a silver path across the tiled floor. Ethan rose, pacing softly, rocking Ava with slow, uncertain steps, but his rhythm soon found its memory. Like years ago, when Caleb was an infant, his body remembered. Marissa, lying on her side, followed every motion. The man once so untouchable in his grey suits now looked clumsy, almost tender. Shoulders that bore the weight of an empire now carried something infinitely smaller, infinitely more precious. The sight made her heart tremble. She asked quietly, "Do you remember the first time you held Caleb?" A faint smile touched Ethan's lips, though his eyes stayed on Ava. "I do. I was shaking so badly that the nurse had to steady my arms. But when he opened his eyes, that was the first moment I understood what it meant to love without expecting anything back." Her throat tightened. "And yet, you missed so many moments after that." He stilled, shadows crossing his face. "I know, and I regret it every single day. But tonight I won't miss this." Aria's soft cry rose from the cradle, insistent but small. Marissa made to sit up, but Ethan moved quickly, laying Ava down and lifting Aria into one arm then, with careful balance, gathering Ava back up as well. One baby on each side, his jaw tense but determined. "I've got them." Marissa blinked at him, stunned, then laughed through her tears. "You think you can handle both at once? I once closed $3 billion deals in a day. 2 tiny girls." His mouth twitched. "I'll learn." Her laugh was fragile but full of something she hadn't felt in months' belief. She hadn't seen that spark in his eyes in so long. Not the hard glint of power, but the light of a father, of a man who knew what he stood to lose, and wanted to hold on to it with everything he had. Ethan lay them back gently as the twins quieted, then settled beside Marissa. His hand found hers, warm and firm. "I don't know what tomorrow will bring. We still have wounds. But tonight," his breath caught, low and earnest. "Tonight, we're a family, and I don't ever want to forget this feeling." Marissa looked at him, eyes still wet but no longer filled only with pain. There was a glimmer of hope for the first time in a long time. Outside, the hallway echoed with the footsteps of nurses. Inside, their little room became its own world. 3 children breathing softly, 2 parents relearning how to sit side by side in the wreckage. The first night of a strange family, but perhaps, also, the first night of a real one. The first morning after their long night, sunlight seeped through the thin curtains, scattering a soft gold across the hospital room. Marissa woke first, her throat dry, her body heavy as if gravity had doubled, but a low chuckle from the corner drew her eyes upward. Ethan sat on a plastic chair with Caleb perched on his lap, and the boy was holding up a new drawing, a big house, with 3 windows and 5 stick figures holding hands at the front. In their cradles nearby, Ava and Aria dozed, lids fluttering faintly as if they too were listening. Marissa clutched the blanket closer, her heart tightening. The sight was too beautiful and tender, warming and breaking her. She had nearly robbed them all of this. Ethan caught her gaze and offered a weary smile. "Morning." She nodded softly. "Did you stay up all night?" "Not quite." His fingers smoothed Caleb's hair. "I dozed here and there, but I wanted to be sure you and the babies had everything you needed." The simple words struck her like a blade, digging into the old wound. 7 months ago, when she'd first realized she was pregnant, she had dreamed of hearing those exact words. Instead of returning to him, she had run. Before she could answer, hurried footsteps thundered down the hall. A nurse burst in, flustered. "Mr. Caldwell, I'm sorry a woman insists on seeing you. We told her it's not permitted, but she refuses to leave." Ethan's brows knitted. "Name?" "Victoria Harlow." Marissa froze, blood draining from her face. The name sliced through the air like a knife. Victoria, his ex, the glittering model whose shadow had once made Marissa feel small, inadequate, less. Ethan shot to his feet, his face hardening. "Tell her this isn't the time." But before the nurse could turn, Victoria appeared in the doorway, every inch a vision of sharp glamour, a red dress clinging to her figure, golden curls tumoring, lips painted crimson like fresh blood. Her heels clicked with confidence, her eyes gleaming with challenge. "Ethan," she purred, her tone sugared and cutting. "Imagine my surprise, finding you here, with her." Marissa stiffened, clutching the blanket tighter, heart racing. Ava whimpered in her crib, as if the air itself had soured. Ethan moved instantly, body shielding the bed. His voice dropped low, steady, dangerous. "Victoria, this isn't the place for your theatrics. Leave." But Victoria's smirk only deepened as her gaze slid toward Marissa. "Haven't you told her? Is your precious empire crumbling? Do certain members of your board want you out? And guess what?" Ethan, her lips curled. "They're working with me." The words fell like shards of glass. Marissa's veins iced over. "Out," Ethan growled, his jaw taut. Victoria's laugh rang sharp, cold. She tapped her crimson nail against her lips. "Oh, I'll go. But remember this, Caldwell love won't save you from ruin. Only power can." She turned, her perfume trailing like poison, and vanished down the hall. The door closed, leaving silence heavy as iron. Marissa's voice cracked. Was she telling the truth? Ethan didn't answer right away. His eyes lingered on Ava, his expression shadowed. "I'll handle it. You don't have to worry." But Marissa heard what lay beneath his old fear stirring, the mask of a man preparing for battle sliding back into place. And she knew, if they didn't face this storm together, everything might break again. The air thickened. She pulled the blanket closer, eyes trembling as they met his, then darted away. Is this only the beginning of a greater storm? Ethan bent over the cradle, patting Ava's back until her cries softened. His shoulders squared, his face hard once more, the CEO, cloaked in control. "Ethan," her voice cracked. "Is it true? Is Caldwell Holdings in danger?" His gaze snapped to hers, eyes fierce but secretive. "I'll take care of it. It's not for you to worry about." Marissa let out a broken laugh, tears spilling. "There it is again. Not for me to worry about. That's what you always said. But I lost our first child while you were too busy to answer a call. Are you sure you want to make that mistake again?" The words pierced him like a knife twisting in a wound that had never healed. He froze, fists tightening, then crossed to her bed, lowering himself heavily onto the chair. "I don't want you dragged into this battlefield. It's filthy, ruthless. It chews people alive." She held his gaze, her voice firm, unwavering. "Ethan, I've been chewed up before. I know what it feels like. But I won't be left outside again. We have 3 children now. If you fall, where do you think that leaves me?" His breath shuddered, head bowing. He admitted the truth he'd resisted for the first time. Love couldn't be walled off from war. To keep them safe, he had to fight, and this time, he couldn't fight alone. Her hand found his, warm and insistent. "I ran once. I won't again. If you fall, I'll fall beside you. Don't shut me out." His eyes rose to hers. No longer only fear, there was steel in them now, a resolve that burned. It seared straight through him. "All right," he rasped, like a vow. "If you truly want in, I won't hide it anymore. But know this, once you step in, there's no turning back." Marissa nodded, tears brimming but shining with light. "We've lost too much already, Ethan. Nothing is scarier than losing more." In their cradles, Ava stirred, her tiny hand brushing against Arya's. The sisters slept on, but the touch lingered, delicate and unknowing, a fragile reminder. Life had put them here, together. They would stand together or fall together. In the hallway, the intercom crackled with the start of a new shift. Inside, the weight of buried truths pressed close. The past had risen again, not just the pain they carried, but a warning. Love would not only be tested by memory, but by the shadows gathering now. 3 days later, Marissa was discharged. Winter still clung to New York, the wind rattling bare trees like skeletal warnings. Ethan drove the SUV himself, ferrying his fragile new family toward Caldwell Manor, the Hampton estate he had once used only for weekends, but now was fortifying into a stronghold for a new beginning. The gates loomed high, wrought iron glinting in pale Sunday. Slowly, they swung open, revealing a stone-paved drive winding toward the imposing house. Caleb pressed his face to the glass, eyes wide with awe. "Dad, this house is like a superhero mansion." Ethan chuckled softly, but his gaze flickered toward Marissa. She sat quietly, arms curled around Ava, her face caught between wonder and unease. Every detail of the manor, the somber wood panels, the towering windows, felt foreign. Too perfect, too cold, not the kind of home she had once dreamed of. At the steps, Harris, the butler, waited. He bowed low. "Welcome home, sir." His deep, steady voice carried warmth, but his eyes lingered on Marissa and the infants with a fleeting surprise. "This is Marissa Vega," Ethan said, his tone unyielding. "And these are my daughters, Ava and Aria." A silence, brief but sharp. Then Harris inclined his head, signaling the staff into motion. Lights flared to life down the vast corridors. A nursery was already prepared upstairs, and nurses were ready. Caleb darted through the hall, his laughter echoing as he discovered the spiral staircase. "I want the very top room." Marissa smiled faintly, but her heart twisted. She had raised Caleb in a cramped apartment where walls pressed close. Now his world had exploded too wide, and she feared she would be out of place. Ethan sensed it. He came to her side, laying a hand gently against her back. "I know this place was never a home, but I want to try to make it one." Her throat tightened. "Ethan, walls and roofs don't make a home. We do." His nod was quiet, resolute. "Then we'll start with us." That evening, Caldwell Manor changed its tune. The dining hall, once echoing with silence, was filled with noise. Caleb chattered about school between bites. Ava and Aria fussed, demanding attention. Marissa bustled clumsily, while Ethan's shirt wrinkled, tie undone, stood rocking one baby, murmuring low to soothe her. Not polished, not perfect, but for the first time, the vast house breathed with family. Marissa looked at him, this man once cast in headlines as steel and shadow, now tender, awkward, holding a squirming infant. A piece of her wanted to believe in this moment. But another part whispered, too fragile, too fleeting, and it was right. For that very night, as the house settled into uneasy sleep, a silver car glided to a stop at the gates. Victoria Harlow lowered her phone inside, crimson lips curling into a razor smile. "The game's just beginning, Ethan." Morning light spilled across the manor. Instead of city horns and neighbor quarrels, Marissa woke to silence broken only by ocean waves and the sigh of wind against glass. The stillness unsettled her. She wrapped a thin robe and stepped into the hall. The manor felt less like a house than a museum. Cathedral ceilings, crystal chandeliers, oil paintings staring down from gilded frames. It seemed grand and empty at dawn, daring her to prove she belonged. Downstairs, she found Ethan in the kitchen, not in a suit but a simple grey sweater, sleeves pushed up, hair tousled. He stood by the counter, 2 cups steaming. "Morning," he said, voice gravelly but warm. "Didn't know if you prefer the machine or pour over, so I made both." Her lips curved despite herself. "You remember I drink the cheap stuff, but thank you." For a heartbeat, silence lingered gentler this time. The aroma of coffee mingled with the old oak scent of the kitchen, weaving something unexpectedly homelike. Then Caleb bounded in, pajama-clad, clutching a fresh drawing. "Mom, Dad, look, it's Ava and Aria." He proudly held up the picture, 2 small swaddled figures beside a taller boy grinning widely. "I'm the hero who protects them." Ethan bent, kissing his forehead. "My little hero." Marissa's chest tightened, but the warmth broke with a sharp sound. The doorbell, long and insistent. Harris appeared, tension written on his face. "Mr. Caldwell." An unannounced visitor. Ethan's brow furrowed. "Who?" The butler hesitated. "Victoria Harlow." The room froze. Marissa's grip on her cup tightened, knuckles white. "What is she doing here?" Ethan straightened, voice icy. "To pick a fight." He strode into the grand foyer. Marissa followed, heart pounding. The door swung open, revealing Victoria, draped in immaculate white, with a sweet smile but eyes cutting like glass. "Good morning, Ethan," she sang, carrying a box of croissants. "Can't we chat as old friends?" His arms folded, tone cold. "You have no place here, Victoria." She stepped inside anyway, her gaze flicking over Marissa with thinly veiled disdain. "So, You've turned this mausoleum into a nest. How quaint. But Ethan, are you sure it will hold? The board of your empire doesn't think so. Marissa stiffened. What do you mean? Victoria's smile sharpened. Just a warning. Love is fragile, Marissa, and so is an empire. The air thickened, taut as wire. From the staircase, Caleb peeked, clutching his family drawing, eyes wide with confusion. Marissa stepped forward, voice trembling but firm. Threaten me all you like, but don't touch my children. For a moment, surprise flickered in Victoria's eyes. Then she laughed lightly, setting the pastry box down before gliding to the door. Interesting. Very interesting. I'll be back. The door slammed shut. Ethan's fists clenched at his sides, jaw locked. His eyes burned not just fury but a cold and fierce vow. No one would take what was his. Marissa stood beside him, her heart racing. She knew then. Caldwell Manor's actual trial had begun. As Caldwell Manor fell into silence that night, Marissa couldn't sleep. The grand new room felt cold, too still. She lay awake listening to the distant crash of waves, the hiss of wind through the window panes. Beside her, Ava and Arya stirred softly in their cradles, while upstairs Caleb slept clutching his stuffed bear. She turned on her side. Ethan's place was empty. Her pulse quickened, unease gnawing. Pulling on her robe, she slipped into the corridor. Each step echoed against the cavernous hall until she neared the study. A voice stopped her in her tracks, Ethan's. But not the warm timbre she knew. The voice of the man who once ruled boardrooms without mercy was clipped, hard. I told you, Victoria. You have nothing left to bargain here. I won't let you or the board use my company as a weapon against my family. Marissa froze. He was still speaking to her. Victoria's voice flowed through the speakerphone, syrupy and sharp. Family. Don't play saint, Ethan. Everyone knows why Marissa left you 7 months ago. Was it because you couldn't keep her, or because she wasn't sure those children were even yours? Marissa's blood turned to ice. Ethan's reply cut like steel. Don't you dare. I've seen the tests. Ava and Arya are mine. Victoria laughed, brittle and mocking. And yet, you've kept it hidden, no public statement, no board disclosure. Imagine if the truth leaks. A CEO betrayed, paternity in question, rivals circling, the perfect scandal to destroy you. Marissa gripped the wall, trembling. Memories she had buried clawed back the early days of her pregnancy, the panic, the shame, the belief she wasn't enough. Now Victoria wielded it like a blade. Ethan's silence lasted a beat, then his voice dropped low, fierce. You can spread whatever poison you want, but this time, I won't lose them. Not ever again. The line clicked dead. Marissa staggered back, pressing into the wall. Tears welled hot. He had defended her and defended their children. But a thorn lodged deep. Had he truly forgiven? Or would the doubt, one day, return? She fled to their room, avoiding her reflection in the hallway mirrors. Yet she saw herself clearly in her mind. The woman who ran, hid, and left wounds that hadn't healed. And the question seared, could love stand when the past had become a weapon? Sleep never came. All night, Victoria's laughter echoed, tangled with her own guilt, and the hollow ache in Ethan's eyes. At dawn, when sunlight spilled across the lawn, Marissa slipped outside. The manor's gardens glistened with dew, the ocean glittering silver in the distance. Beauty pressed down on her chest like stone. Ethan found her there. His white shirt was creased, his face lined with exhaustion. You're up early, he murmured. She didn't turn. I heard everything. Silence stretched. He stepped closer. You heard Victoria, not just her, she whispered, staring at the horizon. I heard my own past, the mistakes I made, the choices that broke us. And now someone else is using them to destroy you. His gaze fixed on her, steady. Marissa, your past doesn't define you. I've chosen to believe in you, and I won't let anyone take that away. Her eyes burned. But what if one day you can't even believe anymore? What if the board, the press, everyone twists this into a scandal? Will you still look at me the same? He seized her hand, grip fierce, pulse beating against her skin. Marissa, I lost you once. I don't need another reason to lose you again. Do you hear me? No reason at all. She turned, tears streaming, into the storm grey of his eyes. She saw it then. He wasn't only fighting Victoria or the board. He was fighting the fear inside himself, of betrayal, of abandonment, of losing the one person he had ever truly loved. Her voice broke as she pressed her head against his shoulder. I can't promise I won't stumble again, but I promise this, I won't run. Not this time, no matter what. His arms closed around her, unyielding. Then we'll fight, together. Through the glass panes of the hall, Harris watched quietly. His old eyes were grave, seeing both the fragile rebirth of love and the storm gathering on the horizon. Caldwell Manor, silent for so long, had become the heart of conspiracies and confessions, of love scarred but alive. Every step from here would be shadowed by the past, tested by the present, and the trials were only beginning. A week later, Ethan returned to New York. On Fifth Avenue, the glass tower of Caldwell Group gleamed beneath the sun, commanding and austere. It had once been his undisputed kingdom, but today, stepping inside, he felt the air no longer belonged to him. The boardroom was packed, its long mahogany table ringed with cold, scrutinizing faces. These were the same shareholders who had once lauded him when profits soared. Now they looked at him as though he were a liability about to be cut loose. At the far side sat Victoria, a guest but hardly silent, her crimson smile sharp with triumph. Mr. Caldwell, one director said, voice like steel, the press is ablaze with rumors about your personal life. A vanished lover. Questions of paternity. Can you deny it? Ethan's expression didn't flinch, though inside his blood seethed. He knew this wasn't about business, it was an ambush, meant to strike at his heart. He braced his palms on the table, voice even but resonant. My personal life has nothing to do with this company's profits. But I will be clear. Ava and Aria are my children. My family is not entertainment for you to dissect. Victoria's laugh slithered through the room. Family? Ethan? You forget your image is your brand. A CEO mired in scandal drags an empire down. The board has every right to question you. His eyes cut to her, sharp as a blade. And you have no right to be here, Victoria. You are not, and will never again be, part of my life. The tension rose thick. Another director interjected. Mr. Caldwell, it's not only rumors. You've missed meetings with Zurich, London, and Tokyo. You've lost focus. Ethan's fist tightened. Images of Marissa in a hospital bed, cradling two fragile newborns, flashed through his mind. That was why he missed those calls. And for the first time in years, he didn't regret it. Yes, I was absent, because my family needed me. But I have not been absent in this boardroom, making strategic decisions and fulfilling my responsibilities to Caldwell Group. His voice was iron, but beneath it, his heart quaked. He wasn't lying, yet he didn't know if he could truly straddle both worlds, empire and family, without breaking. Victoria rose, voice pitched to pierce. If you can't separate emotion from leadership, you are unfit to be CEO. Murmurs rippled across the room, doubt spreading like fire. For a moment, Ethan felt surrounded, one man against a pack of wolves. But then his hand brushed the paper folded in his jacket pocket, Caleb's drawing. 5 figures beneath a roof, holding hands. Quietly, he placed it on the table before him, grounding himself in the only truth that mattered. When he lifted his head, his voice thundered. You think I'll walk away? You're wrong. I'll prove that a man can lead an empire and protect his family, and no one, not even Victoria, will take that from me. The room fell still. At the far end of the table, Marissa Saturday. Ethan had brought her against her protests as a silent witness. Now, her palms slick with sweat, her heart hammered so loud she feared the board could hear. She had never been in this world before, where words cut deeper than knives and reputations could kill without spilling blood. One older director leaned forward, tone cautious. Ethan, no one questions your skill, but if the press digs deeper, we could lose strategic investors. Shares could crash. Victoria seized the opening, her smile like oil on fire. Exactly. I don't want to see this company collapse because Mr. Caldwell is too busy playing house. The market doesn't care who he loves. They only care about profit. Marissa's blood boiled. She knew she should stay silent, but something inside her snapped. "Excuse me," she said, voice trembling but clear. Every head turned. "I'm the woman you're whispering about. So let me speak. Ethan Caldwell is not neglectful. He's proving that a man can be a leader and a father. That is not a weakness. That is strength." Victoria scoffed. "And you think love will save a billion-dollar corporation?" Marissa's gaze locked on hers, sharp as frost. Even Victoria faltered a beat. "No, the truth will. And the truth is, Ava and Aria are Ethan's daughters. I made mistakes, hiding them, but I was never wrong in knowing he is their father." Gasps circled the room. Her words cut clean through the fog of insinuation Victoria had sown. Ethan stared at her, his chest tightening. He had never asked Marissa to bear this weight, yet here she was, standing when he thought she might break. This time, she wasn't running. A director spoke, voice steady. "Mrs. Vega, are you willing to state this publicly?" Marissa drew a breath, steadying her shoulders. "Yes, if necessary. I will stand beside him. I've run long enough." The atmosphere shifted. Where suspicion had been, uncertainty now rippled. Some faces softened. Victoria's lips pressed tight, nails digging into her palms. Her plan to unravel Ethan with whispers had met unexpected resistance. Ethan rose, his voice resonant as he stepped into the center. "You can call me weak for choosing family, but I believe that makes me stronger. I no longer fight for myself. I fight for my 3 children, the woman beside me, and the future of Caldwell Group. Whoever wants to stand with me, stay. Whoever doesn't, the door is open." Silence. Not one chair scraped back. Victoria's smile shattered. Rage flickered in her eyes, but she had no move left. She swept from the room, her heels striking marble like an unspoken threat. Ethan turned toward Marissa, their eyes locking. Gratitude and resolve burned in his gaze. For the first time, he was not standing alone, but both knew this victory was only a reprieve. Victoria would not surrender so easily, and the storm bearing down on them was far from spent. The storm broke only days after the boardroom battle. Headlines screamed in blood-red fonts. CEO Ethan Caldwell and the secret twins, Caldwell Empire in jeopardy amid love scandal. Outside Caldwell Manor, reporters swarmed like vultures, shutters flashing, voices shouting Ethan's and Marissa's names with merciless hunger. Inside, the air was stifling. Harris and security kept the press at bay, but their words leaked in regardless. Caleb hid in his room, clutching his bear, whispering, "Mom, Dad, why are they calling my sister's secrets? Why do they say you're bad?" Marissa knelt, pulling him into her arms, tears spilling hot. "No, sweetheart, your sisters aren't secrets. They're miracles. And I'm not bad, I was just afraid. But not anymore." At the doorway, Ethan watched silently. He knew then. This couldn't continue. He had to choose not to be CEO but to be a father and a man. The next day, he called a press conference at Caldwell headquarters. The hall brimmed with journalists, cameras blinking like a firing squad. At the back, Victoria sat poised, lips curled in anticipation of his fall. Ethan walked to the podium with no media team and no scripted defense. Only Marissa stood behind him, Aria in her arms, Harris cradling Ava, Caleb's small hand gripping hers tight. Ethan drew a breath and spoke. "You want the truth? Then hear it. Yes, I have 3 children. Yes, I lost balance once, and for 7 months, I lost the woman I love. But today, I say this, I will not lose them again." Flashes erupted, whispers roared. He pressed on, voice steady and strong. "Ava and Aria are my daughters. Caleb is my son. Marissa Vega is the woman I love. Write whatever you want, but don't call them a secret. They are my family. They are why I am stronger. And if anyone believes love is weakness, look at me. I will prove you wrong." The silence that followed was deafening. Then, slowly, applause broke, hesitant at first, then growing, until the hall echoed with claps. Cameras caught Ethan gathering his family close, kissing Marissa's forehead. Victoria's smile shattered. For the first time, she realized her greatest weapon, the past. The fear had lost its edge. The media storm raged on for days, But the tide shifted. Images of Ethan holding his twins, or Caleb clutching both parents' hands, splashed across front pages. No longer secrets. The children became symbols, a second chance at love. At Caldwell Manor, the air lightened. Caleb darted through the halls with a gold cape, declaring himself the hero of our family. Ava and Arya began to smile, their laughter filling the once silent estate with life. One evening, Ethan led Marissa to the back garden under a crimson sunset by the sea. The breeze carried salt, and the grass whispered beneath their steps. Ethan stopped before a white arch Harris had set up for a small gathering. "Do you remember the first time we met?" he asked softly. Marissa smiled faintly. "At a charity gala. You were 20 minutes late. Then you spent 2 hours arguing with me about what family meant. I hated you that night. I hated myself." Ethan exhaled. "Because it took me years to learn the answer." From his pocket, he drew a velvet box. Inside, a platinum ring glimmered, set with 3 small stones, one for Caleb, one for Ava, one for Arya. "Marissa Vega." His voice trembled, but his eyes blazed. "I lost you once out of fear, out of pride, out of blindness. I won't ask forgiveness. I'll only ask this. Will you give me the chance to spend my life proving I will never lose you again?" Her breath hitched, tears spilling fast. All the shadows, Victoria, the board, the cameras melted away. Only him, only this. She held out her hand. "Yes," she whispered. "I've run long enough. This time, I'll stay." He slid the ring onto her finger, then pulled her close, holding her as though nothing could tear her away again. And in that embrace, the storm finally broke. The family gathered at the long table that night beneath warm lights. Caleb proudly held up a new drawing. A grand house, 5 figures holding hands beneath the words scrawled in crayon, "Our home." Ethan stared at it, then at Marissa, at the children. He knew empires might tremble, headlines might bite, but this love, this second chance was carved into blood, into bone. Leaning close, he whispered for them alone. "No matter what the world throws at us, we will choose each other, every day, forever."